My family has a history, sorry, my family has memories of the history of slavery, but the story of their arrivals on the shores of America have been lost in the mist of time. Their arrival to this country was unmarked, unrecorded, and intertwined with the stories of native people whose blood runs in my veins. Africans were carried as slaves of the shores of America, chained together on ships, walking in culfs, supporting the weak as they did the strong, because they were literally welded together. We know the stories of children separated from their loving families and forced to work in cotton fields. We know the stories of children that didn't survive. My family experienced virulent racism in Little Rock, Arkansas, when the United States federal troops were called to escort my father's friends to high school over an entire year while they dealt with bigotry and hatred. Hatred was inflamed by white politicians against children and young people wanting to get an education. We knew the stories of childhood dreams being destroyed and how the damage affects children for a lifetime. My daughters live their African American and Native heritage, going to African American celebrations, walking through Central High Museum in Little Rock, Arkansas, listening to the stories of the struggles of the older generation of African Americans to the younger generation of African Americans so they could buy houses, go to school, and even go to restaurants. These two young women understood that they had been given the opportunity by the sacrifices of their elders. They took these opportunities provided to them to heart by going to school and entering into college early, practicing practical skills such as sewing, drawing, cooking, making their best lives. And yet, the last time I saw my youngest daughter was in Seattle, Washington on April 25th, 2016, being stolen away from a King County court room in handcuffs, yelling, screaming, and begging for mercy. I stood outside the courtroom listening to both my daughters screaming until the King County judge asked the King County Sheriff's deputy to ask me to step away. They said that me listening to them scream was making the judge uncomfortable. My two daughters, who were never in any legal trouble, were forced by that judge to travel to California into a private, unregulated, unlicensed threat therapy isolation where they were told that their African American father was a pathogon, using the same terms that the Nazis called people they exterminated. While they were traveling, their captors came into the bathroom stalls and gave my daughters no privacy. After a time, my oldest daughter escaped and told an African American King County judge that she no longer wanted to be threatened or hurt by the use of court order. The judge emancipated my daughter. But when my youngest daughter escaped and tried to talk to a King County judge, she was forced to remain in the threat therapy program, where she continued to be told that nothing from her life before the threat therapy program mattered and that her memories and her family should be erased. In short, she was reminded every day that she was still a slave. The only report that I have about my daughter is that she is related to Malala Yousafzai, a young Pakistani activist who was shot by the Taliban for advocating that young women have an education. The King County judge that forced my daughters to renounce their African American heritage said that she had no interest in talking about the efficacy of threat therapy. Her goal was to make sure that my daughters understood that they were under her control. My daughters were told that if they refused to abide by the judge's orders, that I, their loving father, will be sent to jail or prison to ensure their compliance. This casual use of institutionalized violence and threats against children is racism at its most basic. The judge's powers plus institutionalized prejudice in the courts are being used by the state of Washington and King County to forcibly remove African family and heritage from my daughters.